All right, here we are with the Gut Check Project, episode 29, a super special episode because we have a guest co-host. Eric Rieger was unavailable, and so we have a guest co-host today. It is Dr. Doug Wan, who's here. Welcome to the studio, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me here. Truly an honor.
Well, I think that this is going to be a really, really cool show. You're doing a lot of functional things. You're really big into treating the whole person. Your background, I think, is really cool. I am going to warn you, though. I hope you're a pretty smart guy, because Eric's a smart guy. You got some big shoes to fill in. So why don't we at least find out, like, if you're, like where you actually came from and everything. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm from South Korea. I immigrated to Irving, Texas when I was 11 years old, and went to elementary, middle school, and high school in Irving, MacArthur High School, go Cardinals. And then after that, I went to Northwestern University, I majored in biology and biomedical engineering, and then went to medical school at UTMB in Galveston. And once I was done with the medical school, pursued orthopedic surgery at Washington University in St. Louis, and did spine surgery fellowship in Michigan. And then came right back to Irving, Texas to treat my friends and family members and my local community. And, the Irving, the city that I love, and went back to it and been there ever since.
Yeah, you're way smarter than Eric. Yeah. Of course, right now he's probably arguing, I didn't hear anything about Texas Tech. So, so in his mind, if you didn't go to Texas Tech, you're not nearly as smart. But I guess you did say a few other things, Northwestern, double major, biology, biomedical engineering, and everything. So, yeah, I think the show is going to be really great. What I want to do with this show today, you and I have very similar passions. We're really big into the functional medicine side of things. I want to cover some anti-aging stuff. I want to talk about how supplements and nutrients can actually augment a lot of these different things. Talk about your past. Now, you are one of the most accomplished orthopedic spine surgeons, and I have to pick your brain. Before we even jump in, I was actually talking to a very difficult patient of mine, and I wanted to throw out a disease and just see if you've ever dealt with any of this.
Sure.
I believe that we have somebody who is smoldering into ankylosing spondylitis. Now, this actually happened to one of our coworkers, but now I'm treating somebody who's acting a lot like she did. She spent about 2 years just sort of, you knew something wasn't right, and then pow, it just kind of all popped up. Have you had some experience with autoimmune diseases and stuff like that, specifically AS, ankylosing spondylitis?
Yeah, absolutely. In our spine clinic, we used to see a lot of patients with ankylosing spondylitis. And then also patients who didn't quite have the conditions, but they were HLA-27 positive, and they were brewing the different types of symptoms and conditions. And then we also deal with, because I also deal with lifestyle medicine, we've actually seen a lot of different kinds of patients with autoimmune disease. And what we usually tell patients is that your genetics and gene may load the gun, but you actually pull the trigger through your nutrition and lifestyle.
I like how you say that. Yeah, totally. So one of the things, and I just want to get this out of the way, that you're a very accomplished orthopedic surgeon. You're currently involved in a little bit of a legal situation that you're appealing. What I think is amazing what you have done is, because you have to put your surgical practice on hold for a little bit,
Yes.
you have shifted and have still taken on the role of being a doctor, helping people, and being an educator. You have not slowed down at all. You are the embodiment of resilience, of moving through. I'm super, I think that's really, really neat. And why did you decide to kind of shift gears? I mean, you were going from scalpel, and I get that you have to take a little break from that, but a lot of people like you would just say, well, I'll use this as a break to go tour the world and say hi to things. And you went, no, I'm going to use this as my opportunity to help more people.
Thank you. Helping people and making a big impact was my passion. That is the reason why I went into medicine. I went into medicine because my father suffered from back, and he had 4 back surgeries, and his life was ruined for about 30 years with severe pain. And in life, you come up with so many different challenges. Either you can crumble, or decide to just sit back, and then the life continue to punch you, or you can stand up again and continue to move on forward. And what got me going was, as long as I can make an impact and help all the patients. And my passion was biohacking, which I've been doing all my life. And what I realized was that in medical school, we really didn't learn how to cure the disease. We learned to manage the disease. And through this experience, I really learned how to better manage, and then in many instances, and cure the patients, and wanted to continue to make an impact and help patients. That's what gets me going, and that's what's getting me up every single morning. And no matter what anybody says, as long as I feel good about what I'm doing and continue to practice medicine in different way through health coaching, and even approaching. And these days, I also teach a lot of doctors in Africa how to treat chronic disease.
You teach doctors in Africa?
Yes.
Okay, I got to segue out of that for a second.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I came in contact with a physician who was really into preventive medicine. He's a personal doctor to the president of Cameroon. In Africa right now, they're facing so many different chronic disease. In the past, before the Africa became developed, there was no such a thing as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, or obesity. But as the countries are becoming wealthier and countries are becoming more developed, they're now importing American disease, such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's. And they obviously can't afford to treat the patients with American medicine. So they're looking for ways to treat the patients naturally. And also the citizens, most of the people in Africa are still hesitant about modern medicine. And so we got in contact through a mutual friend, and we decided to teach the physicians there how to reverse the disease naturally, and then also importantly to prevent them.
Wow. And so are you doing some sort of Zoom with them? Do you have a lecture series? How are you doing this?
Yeah, so every Saturday morning, I connect through them through a Zoom meeting. Thank goodness for technology. I don't have to physically be in Africa. I would love to visit the continent sometime soon when things free up. But utilizing the technology, we provide the lectures mostly to physicians, but also just about anyone who's interested. And we open it up to the whole community. And at one point, we had people from 7 different countries connecting. 7 different countries in Africa.
Oh, wow. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So even before you had to kind of take this little hiatus from actually cutting on people and doing spine surgery, you've been thinking about this for a long time. You've been working towards the changing the disease progress. You made a living for many years taking care of the end problem of people having wearing their bodies down. Then you, as the spine surgeon, go in and you take away their pain and you help them. But even then, you were thinking, what can we do to prevent this?
Yes, oh, absolutely. So we've been giving free seminars on how to prevent and reverse chronic disease naturally for about 3 years. I initially did not necessarily want to give the seminars myself. I'm not a good public speaker, and so I wanted to set up the infrastructure and then invited one of the physicians to do it. And he did it a couple times, but took him away from the family, and it takes a lot of effort to prepare different topics. So I thought this was so important. And as you know, when we were in medical school, maybe we had an hour or 2 hours of lectures of nutrition and how to reverse the disease naturally. Well, actually, we didn't learn anything about how to reverse the disease naturally in medical school. We learned how to just manage the disease. And so once I saw the light, I said, I have to share this information with everyone, as many people as possible.
Even as a gastroenterologist, when I trained as a fellow, it is called the Division of Gastroenterology and Nutrition, and I think we got like a half hour a week on nutrition.
Wow.
Even though they split the title, gastroenterology and nutrition.
Yeah, and look at the hospital. Once I had a patient after a very big surgery, and he had a mild MI, a mild heart attack. And the next morning when I went up to the patient's floor, patient had eggs, bacon, cheese for breakfast and lunch. I said, this is wrong. And then go to any hospitals, whether it's Dallas or anywhere else, go to the cafeteria. The hospitals are serving disease-causing food in their cafeteria and to the patients. I said, this is wrong, right? That is the true crime. And I said, it was one of our mission to really empower the people and teach people how to prevent and reverse the disease themselves.
We should do a video where you actually come to my hospital to the doctor's lounge. they give free food to the doctors. You walk around that doctor's lounge, there's bags of M&Ms. I've taken pictures of this. There's M&Ms. This is really funny. There's actually bowls of like gummy bears, and I'll watch, and people will just go by and just grab a handful and start eating on the way out. I'm like, there's so many things wrong with that. Not just the food, but a lot of hands have been in that bowl.
Actually, I got in trouble with one of the hospitals here locally in Dallas. I actually took a picture of what they were serving at the doctor's lounge and then posted on the social media. And then I got called into the principal's office, the hospital CEO.
Before we get called into the principal's office, since I'm not good at this part, this is what Eric does real well. One thing, disclaimer, both Dr. Juan and myself are real doctors, yet this is not intended to treat anybody or give any medical advice. If you have that unusual rash or joint pain or anything, this is not here to cure or treat you, but this could help cure whatever it is, or not, or at least reverse what's going on by lifestyle changes, not through medical advice. And the other thing that we always need to do is really give love to our sponsors. Our sponsors, Atrantil, My Baby, my little polyphenol complex, which we're going to get into a lot of stuff about this because Dr. Juan is a whole food plant-based doctor, and those vegetables all have polyphenols similar to what we have in Atrantil. And we do know that that actually can work like the Mediterranean diet and do all different kinds of things. And of course, the KBMD Health CBD. I'm a big fan of cannabidiol. We get into the science of it. We're going to learn more and more. I don't know if you've gotten too much into that, but the one thing that we talk about a lot, because I start meeting scientists, like we have discussed before, when you have, when doctors say there's no science and then you're meeting the bench researchers that are out there, there's going to be a field. Like you're an orthopedic spine surgeon, you're a subspecialty of a subspecialty. Yeah. I'm a gastroenterologist. I'm a subspecialty of a subspecialty. I guess yours is sub because you did spine after orthopedics. Yeah. So you're next level, even though you didn't go to Texas Tech. We're gonna forgive you for that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is just for Eric because he gets so upset if we don't discuss that. But even when you're sitting there as a subspecialist, we've got all these people with knowledge in other fields that then you start realizing you could be a subspecialist. So I've met researchers that I call endocannabinologists because they understand so much on a molecular basis of the endocannabinoid system, which I think eventually we're going to get to. But I think all of it gets corrected if you eat right and live the right lifestyle. So our little disclaimers, go to atrantil.com or go to kbmdhealth.com and take a look at the CBD. So that's usually Eric does that a whole lot smoother. That's not really my
I think
thing,
you did
we
great.
Have to get out of there. So, all right, getting back to you because this is a rare opportunity to have somebody with both your background, your skill set, and now this continual pursuit, this continual change. I'm very similar like you. I've realized at this stage of my life that moving forward is what keeps me happy. Yeah. Always trying to see, okay, what can we do? What can we do for the next thing? What can we do for the next level? I try to always talk about a recent news article or something, and I want to bring this up.
Sure.
Not to put you on the spot. Dr. Juan, how old are you?
I am 48 years old.
You don't look it. 48 years old. Awesome. An article just came out of the National Bureau of Economic Research, which takes on the myth that life begins at age 40. This is kind of interesting. According to this very large study, that they looked at over 257 different countries, different socioeconomic stages and all that. Fascinating that you're saying that Africa is now getting these Western diseases.
Yes.
So it's impervious. Everybody, the whole world is having the same crisis that I think we face. We just got there a little quicker than everybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
What they looked at is that there is a U-shaped curve for happiness. And as it turns out, it bottoms out at age 47.2. And the reason I want to bring this up is that there's a lot of people, and they were trying to figure out why. Is it genetics? Is it that the stressors are too much? Is it that disease starts setting in right about then? You start realizing your own mortality and all these other things. They don't know exactly why, but they were able to account for education, marital status, all these things. And they did show that although it bottoms out, by 48, 49, people are able to find their way out, and they can usually do it through community and through purpose.
Yes.
So both you and I are beyond that now. So now we're into happiness zone. And I think that you've done exactly that. You get through a little curveball and you're like, I'm just going to keep moving.
Yes.
And I'm going to do this through community and purpose. And what it sounds like is that the first thing you did is say, I'm going to give free lectures. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we've been hosting a free seminar teaching people how to prevent and reverse their chronic disease, and through whole food plant-based nutrition. And it's not just the nutrition itself, but it's a lifestyle. And that's why we don't like to call it, plant-based diet. It's a plant-based nutrition and lifestyle. And what I realized was I started going into plant-based once I lost a few of my colleagues to cancer. They're physicians. And I myself always thought, hey, there's a chance that I might die from cancer. The reason for that is because I've done a tremendous amount of minimally invasive surgery and used 2 intraoperative X-ray machines and got significant amount of radiation exposure.
You just explain real quick, minimally invasive and why you would have to be using an X-ray machine.
So a traditional spine surgery, you would make a big incision, right, and then open up the spine, take away the fat, the fascia, and the muscle, and then strip all of them off and gain access to the spine. The whole concept of minimally invasive surgery is not disrupting the soft tissue. You would make a very small incision, and then utilizing the X-ray machine at the time. Now, these days, you can use imaging guidance with minimal amount of radiation. But when we were first starting out 15 years ago, it was a typical X-ray machine. We were protected with lead, but still, we got a lot of exposure to radiation. So I used to joke around saying, I'll probably die of cancer someday. But what I realized was that I don't want to die of cancer. Who does? So I started doing just a lot of research, how to prevent cancer. And I just, went through about 1,000 different papers, scientific papers. I realized we all have cancer cells. Every single one of us have cancer cells. So we have cancer. So when we're diagnosed with cancer, it's a clinically significant cancer that which we can prevent and in many times and reverse. Even the study from the MD Anderson study showed that number 1 cause of a cancer was diet. Number 2 was the tobacco. Number 3 is obesity, which leads back to the diet, right? And then the genetics makes up the smallest percentage, no more than 5 to 10%. So we actually have the control.
Use your analogy one more time with the gun. I like that.
Yeah, the gene or genetic loads the gun, and then the diet and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so, we now, with better understanding of epigenetics, the genes are like the light switches. Depending on our nutrition and lifestyle, we actually have the ability to turn them on and turn them off. So through that approach, I discovered whole food plant-based nutrition, which has worked wonders for me. Instantaneously, within 6 weeks, I lost about 25 pounds. After age 40, they said if you do exactly the same activities level, eat same thing, you're going to gain about 1 pound or 2 every single year. If then within 10 years, that's an additional 20 pounds. And so starting 40.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify this one thing. You chose to go plant-based whole foods based on the thousands of articles that you researched.
Yes.
So you were not like watching Netflix and said, I'm going to follow this What the Health diet, or I'm going to do the Game Changers. This is based, you were not influenced. You did it all on your own. Yeah. Correct?
So I actually did it before all those the documentaries came out. And the researchers were there. And what happened was one of my friend from medical school, he came to visit me one time, and then he gave me a book called China Study. And I thought maybe because he knew that I was also into business, this was about economics book. I didn't even see the cover. And then I kind of put it in the bookshelf, and I forgot about it for a long time. And then once I started doing the research, the China Study kept on coming up. And then I said, wait a minute, I think I have a book called China Study, written by Dr. Campbell from Cornell. And then I pulled it out, read it cover to cover, along with other studies, and then realized you can actually reverse the disease. And the study's been going on, there's been studies since 1950s. And so I was convinced. I said, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself. And without even trying, first thing I did was weight is important, but not the most important thing. But I instantaneously lost 25 pounds. And I was back at the weight when I was in high school. And you haven't seen many, most people think there's not too many, overweight or obese Asians. Well, in America, there are plenty, right? Maybe not in Asia. And I was becoming one of them. And so instantaneously, I was back into my high school weight. And then I started exercising on a regular basis, and I felt so much better. And now I feel better and stronger than when I was in high school. And until about 3 years ago, I couldn't even do a single pull-up. And now I can do quite a bit. And my goal is by the time I'm 50, I'm going to be able to do a muscle up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I got to actually Eric's super into CrossFit, so he can teach you the whole technique on that. That
would be great.
Yeah, we can sit there and do that. It was on the last week's show or the week before. We actually discussed the fact that when Coke really started penetrating China, that's really when their obesity problem started. The high fructose corn syrup and all that.
Oh yeah, all the processed food, right? And then along with the meat consumption. And as the developed countries are getting wealthier and wealthier, they're eating just like Americans, a standard American diet, right? All the processed food, all the sugar, all the high-fat animal products. Even in America, average Americans consume about 250 pounds of animal products every single year, which is a tremendous amount, right? And so, and the China study,
how many pounds?
250 pounds. That's a lot, right? That's average American. Since I don't eat any, somebody's eating 500 pounds of meat every single year, right?
I'm going to look at that cow and go, I'm going to eat half of you this year.
Yeah.
The whole cow.
That is a tremendous amount. I think they said also during the Super Bowl, I don't know how they come up with the numbers. Every year during the Super Bowl, people consume about 1.6 billion chicken wings. Oh my God.
1.6 billion chicken wings.
Yes.
For the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
All right. Yeah, that is a lot of wingless chickens running around.
Yeah, absolutely. And the chicken these days doesn't look anything like the chickens from, let's say, even 100 years ago, because they're genetically modified, and they have so much more antibiotics. They have so much more chemicals, growth hormones. And so people are so concerned about eating food that's not genetically modified. But most people in America don't know where the food comes from. And they don't really think about it, especially when it's in a hamburger or a chicken sandwich, which they really do need to pay attention. Whether you're plant-based or not, you should really know where your food comes from.
I love having you on here because even as a gastroenterologist, and even though I think like kind of we want to treat the whole body, I have not spent that much time really going over the whole diet thing because I naively am like, okay, this is the weight I want to be. This is kind of what I want to look like when I'm at the beach. If I start not seeing the abs, or we go from that 6-pack to the 4-pack to the 2-pack to the no pack, then I just start working out more.
Yeah.
And I got a little rude wake up call last week. I went to I have a functional medicine practitioner. His name's Kevin Wilson. It's Smart Wellness Now, and they do real like deep dive into the blood work. So it isn't just HDL, LDL. It's it's LDL C. It's apolipoprotein B. And it's all this. And my cholesterol went up. And I'm like, I'm feeling better than I ever felt. What?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you're doing something wrong, buddy.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I'm pretty much paleo, so I don't really do dairy or gluten, but I will mow down some meat. I'm that guy eating the 500 pounds. So you got me rethinking a few things.
Yeah.
So he's given me 3 months to try and reverse this. So I'm starting a little bit slow, and so I'm going to start watching your videos for sure, because I did the thing that most people do. I went and watched Game Changers on Netflix, and which is a very fascinating documentary in the sense that got more traction than What the Health and Knives Over Forks and all those other vegan propaganda ones, because I think that they were talking about performance.
Yes.
What you're describing is exactly that. This is not an ethical thing. This is not a conscious choice. You were like, no, I did my research. This, I can be healthier.
Yes. I mean, I did this because for my health. And, I always tell people that I want to live until 120 years old. I may have had a better chance if I actually started when I was in my 20s. That'll
just be you and Dave Asprey having tea together, because he says the exact same thing on his podcast.
I think he says he wants to live forever. And so I don't know if that's possible yet. But they said if you do it right, the kids who are born today have a potential to live until 150 years old.
150 years old.
Yeah.
Have the potential.
But the sad thing is the kids, between age 10 to 12 years old, what percentage of the kids actually have early signs of atherosclerosis? 75%.
What?
75% of the kids between age 10 to 12 years old have already fatty streaks.
No.
They also found that
That's nuts. There's no way.
even the fetuses are now showing up. Unfortunate event because, whatever, may have happened. But when they do an autopsy on fetus, even the fetus, some of the fetus actually have, some fatty streaks depending on mother's, a vascular system. Right? So you're starting out life already having early signs of cardiovascular disease. What is that? Right? And so when mom said, I'm really, sensitive to, let's say, moms who are pregnant, and then also parents, they have such a difficult, challenges, feeding their kids, but they're not really thinking about what they're serving them, right? And I cringe when I go to a breakfast, and then, a next table, parents are serving their kids bacon or hot dogs, and the kids and the food that is known by World Health Organization as a Group 1 carcinogen, right? So I think we need to really step back and educate the public and help them see what they're putting on their table. And when I saw the article where the kids, between 10 and 12 years old, 75% of them already have signs of, cardiovascular disease. I mean, that's terrible. We're not doing something right. And we spend so much money on managing the disease, which we don't do very well, and completely forgetting about preventative medicine because there's no money in preventative medicine, right? That was our mission, is to actually go to community and teach them how to eat properly. And so we've done not only lectures at our clinic, but also if anybody wants to hear us talk, we'll go and give a talk. We've gone down to the South Side and then the African American churches, to church in Richardson at Methodist, pretty much 99% Caucasian, congregation, or community centers who wants to.
You still have the guts to go to a nice Korean barbecue establishment and give a talk? Because I like Korean barbecue, man.
Yeah. For whatever reason, Koreans were known for Korean barbecue, but in Korea, actually, their health is declining like in China because the meat consumption has increased, processed food, and then their lifestyle is changing. But they used to be one of the healthiest country in the world because they were too poor to actually eat meat. Right? It wasn't available. Everyone wants to eat. So if you look at all the countries, all the cities along the blue zones, the cities that have the most amount of centenarians, most people are poor. So by being rich, yeah, you may have the money to spend it, but you're actually ruining your health.
All right. So I was going to ask you this, and it's a perfect segue right now. So I was talking to one of my patients today that she's going to be a guest here shortly. Happens to have Crohn's disease and gives back to the community just like you. She works as a counselor and does all this, and she happens to be a speech therapist for underprivileged kids with autism. So part of this, they send them with the school system. And so her and I started talking. I started talking about how last week we did a whole show on a chemical that makes plastic flexible called DEHP. You've been exposed to it a ton as a doctor. So have I. That's what IV bags are. That's what the tubing is. All the catheters and tools that we use to be flexible so that we're not puncturing where we don't want to. It uses chemical DEHP. And when you said in utero they're finding stuff, as it turns out in utero, if a woman is exposed to it, it just goes to the fetus and causes all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So what her and I talked about is, I'm like, man, well, what can you do to circumvent this autism, basically epidemic? And she's like, they're too poor to eat healthy.
Yeah.
So now you just said that when countries were poor, they eat it healthier. So let's talk about the cost of living your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is it possible, if I don't have a high income, to eat a plant-based whole food diet?
Oh, absolutely. When people are thinking whole food plant-based, I think a lot of people get that confused and they think it's vegan, and they get meat replacement products, which are actually quite expensive. Right? So when you do
this guy did that when he watched Game Changers, and it didn't work out well.
Yeah,
because I think either the fillers or the soy or something made me very inflamed.
Yeah,
so I backed off.
So one of the things I really also talk to the vegan community is that they've already given up the meat, which is the one of the most difficult thing for a lot of people. However, they also need to get away from the processed food, because most of the meat replacement products are processed. So when you're eating whole food plant-based, you are eating non-processed or minimally processed food. And so the best place, the best pharmacy is actually with F, F-A-R-M-A-C-Y, right? Pharmacy is in the produce section. That is the medicine. That's where people need to go shop. And so if you get dry beans, it costs pennies, right? Versus, getting ground beef or getting chicken breast. So actually eating whole food plant-based can be very, very inexpensive. That's why along the blue zones, like Nicoya, Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia and Icaria, all those countries, all those communities, people were relatively poor. They're not wealthy at all. Even, especially like Nicoya, they were eating mostly bean.
Where's Nicoya?
Nicoya, Costa Rica.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's one of the cities in blue zones that has the most amount of centenarians, right? And they were 98% eating plants because they were too poor to eat meat.
Huh.
And they're living beyond. And then they didn't necessarily go to the gym, or CrossFit or 24-hour fitness because they walked everywhere. They didn't have cars, right? So they're moving their body every single day. They're eating mostly plant, and because that's all they had available to them, right? And then they had sense of community, and they had sense of purpose. And you mentioned purpose earlier. I think that is so critical. You have to have a reason for living, right? You have to have why. As long as you have why and sense of purpose, no matter what challenges are in front of you, you can overcome them. And that's how powerful human beings are.
Yeah.
Right? And if you decide to just give up, that is a failure. Okay? And no matter how many mistakes you make, how many failures that you face, as long as you stand back up and then continue to pursue your purpose and your why, I think most people will be very, very happy.
Yeah, I think that you saying that you came at 11 years old, you started your journey probably not the easiest time in your life.
Not at all. Didn't know how to speak English.
Yeah.
And all our family, including my parents, we worked as janitors. Don't want to get my parents in trouble, but when we were 12, 13, 14 years old, we used to go help our parents, clean the toilets in the building. And then I still pass by one of the buildings we used to clean when I was 14 years old. That's what we did as a family. And then they, opened the flea market store. My mother was shot at, twice when she was working at the flea market store when she was being robbed, right? And luckily they missed. Thank goodness.
Good Lord.
And then where my parents lived, after I left for college, there was a drive-by shooting at my parents' house. They got the wrong house. It was supposed to be the next door, but my parents were asleep, and then fortunately their windows were shattered. And so, we grew up very humble. And a lot of people think that, you're a doctor, you must have come from a doctor family. That wasn't the case at all.
Yeah.
And we lived in the government-assisted housing. But, our parents always gave us, good foundation and always, taught us to have purpose in life. And that really, sunk in with us for, since we were a little child.
Yeah.
And always the life was, living the life with purpose. And that was our mission.
So you come over here, you go through this kind of hardship. Now, we kind of tongue-in-cheek talked about how I hope you're as smart as Eric. Obviously, Eric's a very smart guy. He's my CRNA, and he still continues to do whatever he wants to do. He's an entrepreneurial spirit, very, very like-minded like us. He's very big into purpose, into raising his kids the right way and all that stuff. But your academic background is super impressive. I mean, just for the average person that says, oh, that's a doctor. No, there's levels of doctor. There's levels of med schools. You got to really work to get into some of these places. And I'm just so impressed that you basically have to put your career that you worked so hard to do, and you went, awesome, I'm going to work on this now. I love that. I think that is the coolest thing. And I'm learning for you. So I want to ask you a couple quick questions.
Yes.
Because these are the arguments that I get. So the community that I'm in, in fact, I should, we'll talk afterwards, but I'm in part of some really cool entrepreneurial groups where it's just like-minded people that all they do is sit around and say, don't step on this landmine. I blew off my left, theoretically, in a business sense, I blew off my left foot doing that. I wouldn't do that. Try this software instead. Try this thing. And, you read books and stuff like that. Well, a lot of these people are the paleo community, and they're really smart people. Chris Krasser, Rob Wolf, I've become friends with them in these groups. And what I'm hearing is that Kevin Wilson, my doctor, is not plant-based. He's very big into paleo and all these other things. So a couple curveballs towards you.
Sure.
All right. Let's talk about the thing that I get asked a whole lot, lectins. So you said dry beans do this. What's your thought on lectins? Do they create? And then that's going to lead us into the microbiome and autoimmunity and eventually into your entrepreneurial spirit where you continue to grow. So that's where I want to head with this. But can we talk about lectins real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very interesting topic. And so if you think about the lectin, especially in the beans, no one can eat the bean raw. You don't eat dry beans. You can't eat it. You can't digest it. And we don't recommend it, right? Because if you eat it, you're going to get nauseated. You're probably going to throw up. However, if you cook them properly, right, all the lectins are gone, right? And so lectins are there so that the plants can protect itself. And so a little bit of it is actually healthy for you because you're stressing your body. However, once you cook
hormesis.
Yes, absolutely, right?
The term. Hormesis means that you stress your body a little bit so it adapts.
Yes.
That's why we exercise. That's why we fast. That's why we do things.
That's why, we get exposed to heat. That's why we take cold showers, right? And so
I don't take cold showers. I refuse to go that route. I'll sit in a sauna, but I will not do a cold shower.
You should try it. Maybe 10 seconds first and 15 seconds. In the beginning, you hate it, but you'll learn to love it, right? But the
we're going to get to lectins really quick. Just this reminds me, my late father-in-law, who passed away a few years ago, we were watching a show on Navy SEALs, and a Navy SEAL actually did a obstacle course where he first soaked himself in warm water and then did the course, and then they put him in ice water, and with an esophageal probe, they showed that he dropped his core temperature, and then through various Navy SEAL techniques, he raised his core temperature. And so my father-in-law, this was on Christmas, this is about 10 years ago, goes, Dallas, it's not that cold, but it's cold enough. It was like 30 or 40 or something. He goes, I bet you can't even get in that pool. I went out there with my son and my father-in-law, and I jumped in, and like a total weenie jumped out in about 10 seconds. So the whole cold thing, I think that's funny. But all right, that's the whole point is that lectins can do this. Let's get back to lectins.
Yeah. So, but once you actually properly cook the beans, I recommend soaking them at least for 8 hours or even 24 hours.
Soaking the beans first.
Yes. Soak the beans at least minimum 8 hours. If you have a pressure cooker, you don't need to soak them. You just dump it in there and you cook it.
Do canned beans qualify?
The canned beans are already cooked, so you don't even need to cook it. You can just open it and start eating them.
Do you find canned beans unhealthy, or do you always do whole food?
At the house, we have both dry beans and canned beans because to make it a little bit more convenient, right? And the canned beans are, the study have shown that they still retain just as much nutrients. And so when I'm really busy, I would open up a canned bean with my whole grains and mix them up. Along with different kinds of spices, and then along with different greens. But once you cook the bean, most of the lectins are gone. So there's really nothing to worry about. And so you don't need to take lectin, supplements or anything like that. If you properly cook the food, then there's really no issues with lectin. And then if you think about it, so beans are the most known for lectins, right? Every single one of the cities, right? There's like one common theme among blue zones, 5 cities that has the most amount of centenarians, right? The research by Dan Buettner from National Geographic. Every single one of them, the common theme was beans, 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 beans.
Shut up. Really?
Every single one of them. There was their main source of protein was their beans.
Dang. And I actually have been avoiding them because I'm trying to, I kind of go with the no grain thing.
Yeah.
So
the beans is one of the healthiest thing one can consume. Not only it's a great source of protein, but also it has so many phytonutrients, and I consider them as a superfood. Really, really cheap superfood.
What are your favorite beans?
All of them. But we have at the house about 10 different kinds of beans. And then when I make grains, I usually mix like black beans, pinto beans, white beans, navy beans, kidney beans, along with, let's say, buckwheat, brown rice, wild black rice, barley. I mix them up, and then that's how I make the rice. And so rice and beans. I don't, we definitely avoid any refined grains such as white rice.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we avoid any kind of anything that's white, right?
Okay, so I hope my wife is listening. My wife's Puerto Rican. So I mean, beans and rice is just pretty much, it's whatever. I'm like, honey, what are we having? She's like, salmon. Yeah. And beans and rice.
Yeah, beans and rice. That's good. And you just got to put in some greens.
But you avoid the white rices.
White rice, yeah. So
as a Korean, you still avoid white rice because we love. I mean, that's actually our favorite. If we're gonna globalize our cuisine for my family, I got a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. We essentially eat Japanese in this order: Japanese, Thai, Vietnamese, Chinese, almost. Anytime we get a chance to eat out.
You're Asian.
We are definitely, it is definitely our favorite cuisine. So we end up eating a lot of rice.
Yeah. So interesting fact is that in Asia, a while back, the white rice was, it's extra processed, right? So this was actually for aristocrats or the wealthy individuals. All the poor people ate the brown rice, which is less processed. It's unprocessed, right? And so the poor people actually lived longer. They were healthier than rich people, right? Same thing happened 100 years ago. The rich people ate white bread, right? And then the poor people ate the whole grain bread. And guess what? It was the poor people who were healthier, right? So, the grains, especially white grains, they're extra processed. And so, and also raises your blood sugar level much, much faster and increases more insulin production or release of the insulin. So we try to avoid anything that's processed. And so, including the grains. So if you eat, brown rice or, buckwheat, barley, black wild rice, those are the grains that I would recommend. So that I say it's whole grains, not grains, whole grains.
Whole grains.
Whole grains.
Beans okay. Lectins get destroyed when they get soaked and then followed by cooking and or canned.
Yes.
And then
because canned beans are cooked.
Canned beans are cooked. And then as far as the grains. So this works really well for you. And I know right now that there's, what I've seen with diets, especially when people make a living, like if they have a book or.
Sure.
I hung out with Rob Wolf. The guy looks amazing. And he's been keto for 10 years. And Chris Kresser is essentially, straight up paleo. And, I know his blood work is amazing. We've talked about that. And so there are, the things that actually work. It's not working for me. My doctor just told me. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, we need to call Doug. I need to eat his brain and figure out what's going on here because maybe my genetics. So you used the term epigenetics a little while ago. Explain what epigenetics actually is because there's some confusion around this.
Yeah, so just to simply put it, way I like to explain it is our gene is like a light switch, right? And so we are born with certain genes, unfortunately, for some people, and they may have a greater risk of developing certain type of disease. But just because you carry the gene does not actually mean you are actually going to develop those disease. But there's a lot of external factors, environmental factors, including the cancers, right? And so by a proper nutrition and lifestyle, you actually have the ability to turn the gene on or turn them off. So what that tells us is that you actually have a full control. So, like Elizabeth Blackburn, who won a Nobel Prize from UT Southwestern for discovering telomerase, did a study with the...
She's the one that discovered telomerases?
Yeah. So along with the telomeres, and that's what she won the Nobel Prize for.
Did not know that. Yeah. Wow. Out of here in Dallas.
Yeah, UT Southwestern.
That's impressive.
So she did the research with Dean Ornish. And they got a group of patients who had early stage prostate cancer. Right? And then when they did the genetic study, all the over 500 cancer genes were actually turned on. And then they spent 3 months changing their diet and lifestyle. And then they did the genetic study again. all the genes were actually, cancer genes were turned off. Over 550 cancer genes, oncogenes, were turned off. So you only took them 3 months.
What?
So especially prostate cancer, right? Especially if you catch them early stage, you really want to treat them with a diet and a lifestyle change. They said the traditional surgery, whether it's a chemo or the surgery, does not prolong. Only 1 out of 49 people actually live longer after getting traditional, a conventional medical treatment.
Well, when you start looking at some of this, I listened to a podcast called Medical Reversals. It was on Freakonomics, the Freakonomics podcast, and they actually had some doctors on there. And if you look back at all these medical reversals, so basically your doctor says do this, and then we go, oh no, that was wrong, because now we've looked at our cohort of 10,000 patients over 10 years. We can go on and on about that. The estrogen replacement therapy. One of the things that's being brought up, and I brought this up to my doctor because my cholesterol, is statins. Statins have not been shown to improve lifespan. And so the question is, do they actually decrease the incidence of events, but it has not been shown to improve lifespan. So now I'm at that stage in my career in medicine where I'm starting to question so many things. I'm having patients come to me and, well, let's throw this one out with autoimmune disease. And you and I were talking about this. I treat a lot of Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. I use drugs like Remicade and Humira. Have you had any experience with, as an orthopedist, you're going to be exposed to rheumatoid arthritis. You're going to be exposed to ankylosing spondylitis, polyarthropathies from these other things. Have you had any wins with using your method?
Oh, absolutely. So some of them are my patients, and some of them are attendees to our free seminars. And I give an example of Denise. She gave us a permission to talk about her. And so she came to us suffering from severe rheumatoid arthritis. And she's been on multiple medications, even methotrexate in the past, and Humira. And Humira costs $25,000 to $50,000 a year, right? And one of the side effects is heart failure. And she began to have severe heart issues.
Whoa.
So they had to take her off, and she was in severe pain. And so I said, you got nothing to lose. You tried everything else. So why don't you try whole food plant-based nutrition? And that's what she did. She did that January 1st, 2018. Within 2 months, she was in remission. All the pains were gone.
On her RA, rheumatoid arthritis.
Rheumatoid arthritis.
So rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease. Autoimmune means something turns a genetic switch on and your body starts attacking yourself. In gastroenterology, I see it with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, autoimmune hepatitis. In your field, you see it with the joints.
With the joints, rheumatoid arthritis. But we also have seen patients with multiple sclerosis, right? And actually, this was another patient who came into the clinic on a wheelchair, right? And had multiple sclerosis. So we actually coached...
In a wheelchair?
In a wheelchair.
That's very advanced MS.
Yeah, it's pretty advanced. And the patient went whole food plant-based. And was 6 to 8 months later, when they came back for a follow-up visit, he actually walked in with a cane. So he still had weakness, but he got him off the wheelchair, and now he's able to strong enough to actually walk with the cane.
Just diet change.
Just a diet change. And he was off all the medications. And he's not the only one. And there's a lifestyle medicine physician even up in New Jersey, a good friend. She was initially infectious disease doctor, and during her residency or fellowship, she woke up one day completely paralyzed.
What?
And that's how she discovered she had multiple sclerosis. And to a point, she was walking with a cane, and she was about to get on a wheelchair. And she read an article about blueberries, right? She said, no way, there's no, this can't be. And she starts researching and really realized the autoimmune disease starts from the gut. And she needed to find a way to decrease inflammation. And she needed to, once she healed her gut and she changed her complete nutrition, went whole food plant-based, 10 years later, she ran a marathon.
I'm sorry, I don't have any Kleenex here. Do you have any Kleenex? Because I have tears of joy. I just had an orthopedic surgeon say that everything starts in the gut. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, we think that, a lot of the lifestyle medicine physicians believe that autoimmune disease may be a different sort of autoimmune disease, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis, maybe a one disease. It all starts from the gut, and then it manifests to a different disease based on our genetic makeup. And so our treatment method, whether it's lupus, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto thyroiditis, it's all pretty similar. We may make a little bit of a different protocol for them, but overall it's a whole food plant based, and many of them improve significantly.
Wow, that is so. That's actually a common theme that we talk about. We have brought some people in, but my thing is we've got lots of data to show that when you have an inflammation in your gut, that leads to an inflammatory cascade that can cause this epigenetic phenomenon. And so if somebody's sitting around listening, so I want to talk about what else you have going on, which means that you've taken it to next level. But everything about this show and about what we want to do is talk science first. Clearly, you're a brilliant man, and you know your. I'm a gut doctor, so you know your SHIT. So I wanted to throw this article out at you because it's fascinating that we can talk disease, and I could sit there and say if you've got rheumatoid arthritis, if you've got MS, if you have anything, but there's also one underlying thing that happens to all of us, and you keep talking about the blue zones. A recent review article, my little secret weapon, we'll eventually be able to disclose who it is, but she sent me an article yesterday, and with you coming on, it is a review article on the new insights for cellular and molecular mechanism of aging and aging-related diseases. Herbal medicine is a potential therapeutic approach. So in other words, what this title says is, we're all aging, and why do you want to load the gun faster than it should be loaded? Mm-hmm. So what this article looked at is they go into the background a little bit where 900 million people in the world are over the age of 60.
Wow.
And you just pointed out that it doesn't matter where you live now. Mm-hmm. It looks like it's pretty much spreading everywhere. So aging, which can be divided into both pathologic and physiologic. So if you are perfectly healthy, you're going to physiologically age. If you choose to load your gun faster, that's pathologic aging. Yes. And this article gets into really cool, geeky science about the complex biological processes and the decline of tissue and organs and structural degeneration. And then they go into telomeres, and then they go into the fact a common theme keeps popping up. And it is reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. Yes. So stress at a cellular level or inflammation at a cellular level leads to aging. Yes. So if you didn't care about anything about the fetus having a heart attack or a 10-year-old having coronary artery disease, we spend a lot of money trying to look younger. Mm-hmm. I just got done talking about the other article that said that at age 47, maybe that's when men look in the mirror and go, "Uh-oh, I'm there." I don't know. It all comes down to reactive oxygen species. This leads to they can actually get into the actual mechanism. So one of the things I run into that we have discussed, which is I'm sure you've run into, because I think your field is a little bit less holistic than GI, which is probably because the gut affects so many things. But I imagine if you're trying to talk to one of your colleagues at a conference and say, "Hey, plant-based," they probably look at you like, "What?"
Yeah, I don't represent typical look of orthopedic surgeon, right? So if you imagine orthopedic surgeon, those of you who don't know, like in medical school, we are like they call orthopedic surgeons smart jocks, right? Everyone's hitting the gym, bone broke, me fixed. These are big guys, ex-athletes, right? And then somehow I snuck in as a nerd, right?
There's so I have a friend who played football for the San Francisco 49ers, played at University of Notre Dame, and he's very good friends with an orthopedic surgeon named Brian Radigan, and he played linebacker for Notre Dame. And if there is ever the avatar of what I thought. This guy was just jacked, and and he's an orthopedic surgeon now for Notre Dame.
Yeah, wow.
But anyways, you are talking different than the typical orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, and so, but but I think even with orthopedics and also especially in spine, some of our patients, if they choose to follow our diet and lifestyle modification, they came back, even with herniated disc, most of the inflammation was gone, pain was gone, and so they would cancel the surgery. I said, congratulations, right? And so if I can help patients, the surgery is definitely the last resort.
Say that one more time. You got paid to operate, and you were happy when you didn't have to operate.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Because there's plenty of patients who's not following the lifestyle modification and who's in agony, who failed all the conservative treatment, who's going to need the surgery. But what I would love to be able to do is to prove to the medical community that so many of the surgeries and procedures that we do are completely unnecessary, because if people are willing to make the lifestyle modification, if the physicians actually know and teach their patients how to make the modification, because most of them do not know, right? Then I think many people can avoid significant surgical procedures, whether it's a cardiac cath, open heart surgeries, which we know that does not extend anybody's life, right? And same thing with spine surgery, and orthopedics is a little bit different. If you break a bone, you broke a bone, and you need surgery to fix it, right?
Yeah.
So
don't try and hobble into Whole Foods after that skiing accident.
Yeah, I don't think whole food plant-based is going to fix a broken bone. It may help you heal faster, but you're probably going to still need surgery. And so that is one of my mission, and I get a great enjoyment out of it. And I remember one patient who walked in who had a thoracic herniated disc, and in order to do the surgery, we have to do a thoracotomy. So basically, cracking her chest open, decompress the lung in order to get to the spine, from the front. And I said, you really don't want to have this surgery. We can do it if you want to. However, why don't you give me 3 months? Make these changes, come back in 3 months. If it doesn't work, then we'll go ahead and do the surgery. She came back to clinic in 3 months along with her husband. She lost 40 pounds. He lost 60 pounds, right? And she said her pain was gone. And she said, doctor, I don't need your service anymore. Awesome. Congratulations.
Wow.
Right? So I think it is very possible. And, once you have seen that, I just get a kick out of it.
I'm feeling like a total jerk right now because we did a show on using cell phones while people are on the bathroom doing social media posts. And I told everybody to keep doing that because it creates hemorrhoids so they can come see me. I feel like a jerk. You're out there. I'm over there encouraging, sit on the toilet longer, make an appointment with me.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, you're making me look bad, man. I want to talk about something about this article because we use the term reactive oxygen species all the time. Now, one of the things that they got deep into this article is about a lot of the end organ disease that kills most of us. Cardiac disease, strokes, dementia. A lot of it comes down to blood vessels.
Yes.
The endothelium, meaning that as our blood vessels, all this inflammation leads to endothelial dysfunction and impaired activity and arterial stiffness.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring this up is because I'll plug this, the polyphenols and atrantil, we do know that they actually improve the most polyphenols when taken, and there's literature for this, but when we first launched atrantil, we did it strictly for people that bloated, and then we had all these people that kept staying on it, and that's when I started backing up because I was looking at one little problem, and then went, oh, this is actually, it's sad that I'm now learning, because all I've been doing is doing plant-based, but I started with a pill, and now I'm working my way to lifestyle, which you're doing lifestyle, and you realized, hey, I can help people in different ways. So you noticed immediately that endothelium is really important. And when we talked before and you brought me some gifts, I would like to talk about what else you have going on here, because very clearly you have put some serious thought into this. And then I came backwards. I started with a plant-based product to treat something, and now I'm learning about a plant-based lifestyle.
Yeah.
You did the opposite. You started plant-based lifestyle and said, I'm going to produce the best product for that.
Yeah.
So tell me what you got here.
Yeah, so one of the things that we developed was it's called Neonox. It's a nitric oxide booster.
Neonox.
Neonox. N-E-O-N-O-X.
N-O-X.
And this product was developed without intention of developing a supplement company. What we realized was, as I was doing research, even as a physician, we knew that the heart disease was the #1 killer, but I didn't realize how severe it was. And it is actually the #1 killer of both men and women worldwide, right? And,
we start seeing once women go into menopause,
Yeah.
they get the same risk as men.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of women just get neglected, and they think it's men's disease. But women develop a cardiovascular disease just as much as in the guys. And 1 in 3 deaths in U.S. is related to vascular disease. So pretty significant amount. And it all comes down to endothelium. And the nitric oxide, what I realized, was the most important molecule in our body because it saves endothelium. And it's produced within our endothelium. However, as we age, by the time you're 40, you lose about 50% of your ability to produce it. By the time you're 60, you lose about 85% of your ability to produce nitric oxide.
Say that one more time.
So by the time you're 40, you lose about 50% of your ability to produce nitric oxide, which is the most important molecule in our body.
Why do we do that?
So a few things. Number one, it's produced in your endothelium, right? Endothelium is basically the inner lining of your artery. And so as we age, we develop atherosclerosis, we damage the endothelium, so therefore we lose the ability to produce the nitric oxide. But along with that...
So the inflammatory process damaging the endothelium
Yes.
does not allow us to produce the one molecule to repair the endothelium.
Exactly. And so not only the nitric oxide is the strongest vasodilator that lowers the blood pressure, and then also vasodilate the vessels so that more nutrients and oxygen can be delivered to the end organs, right? It also stimulates the stem cells and activates the stem cells and mobilizes the stem cells. Okay?
Nitric oxide does?
Nitric oxide. And that's how we really actually got into the nitric oxide, because we knew we needed to boost the nitric oxide to our patient when we're doing orthopedic stem cell therapy, right? To help them prevent either rotator cuff tendonitis, tear surgeries.
We had Wade McKenna on our show, the orthopedist from Fort Worth that had the Panama stem cell clinic.
Yes. Yeah.
We deep dived into stem cells.
Yeah.
That's some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
And but most people are looking for that magic pill. They want the injections, right? And then stem cell therapy. But you need to activate them. And people who need it the most are typically 60 plus, right? Sometimes 40 plus. But most of the patients who have arthritis are 60 plus. But they can't really activate their stem cells because they don't have any nitric oxide. That's part of the reason why people develop cardiovascular disease. People develop diabetes, right? People develop erectile dysfunction, which is a vascular disease, right? And that's why even Viagra or Cialis only works on 50% of the population.
So one of the reasons why Game Changers has been so much more well-received is that they have a whole segment on nighttime boners.
Yeah.
And how eating a plant-based diet actually improves erectile dysfunction.
Yes.
And so, and not just erectile dysfunction, actually improves nocturnal erections, I should say.
Yeah.
Boner seems a little bit unprofessional.
You are a doctor.
But so that's one of the things. So it's when you talk anti-aging or you talk sexual performance, that's what people spend all their money on.
Yes.
They don't sit there and go, oh, I'm going to have a heart attack. Yeah. When really, it's all the same process.
It's all the same
thing. The thing that's making you look older, the thing that's making you not perform as well in bed is the exact same thing that's going to kill you.
Exactly. And the dementia, which are mostly, now we're realizing that is a vascular disease also, because you're just not getting enough blood to your brain, right? And so, and also lack of energy. After age 40, everyone's suffering from fatigue, lack of energy, because mitochondria biogenesis is actually initiated by nitric oxide also. So it helps nitric oxide stimulates the production of mitochondria, which is the energy source.
There we go. Yeah, so that's the energy source of every cell. Every cell has a little power plant.
Yes.
It's called the mitochondria. mitochondria.
And mitochondria dysfunction is one of the major problems that people face, especially 40 plus. So there's so many different things, and even diabetes and insulin resistance. Without nitric oxide depletion will increase insulin resistance also. So there's so many. Nitric oxide serves also as a messenger. And you can almost, although it is gas, you can almost think of it as hormone. And so it's so critical that we decided, we were initially looking for nitric oxide products to give to our patients, especially the stem cell therapy patients. But we couldn't find one that was, with the high quality product. Most of the products, unfortunately, are made for younger group of people who are working out at the gym for that,
Explode, get your pump on,
Yeah.
do this, and then you find out that 99% of them have nothing in it.
They have nothing in it. They have a lot of caffeine, different stimulant that gives them energy, but it's not really delivering more oxygen and more blood to where it needs to go. So we decided that, we're going to produce a pure nitric oxide booster ourselves, initially just to give to our patient. And that was part of the package for stem cell therapy.
Oh, really? So that was like, look, if I'm gonna go through the trouble of either injecting you or operating on you, then you're going to walk out of here with at least a bag that's going to help you recover, improve, and have. I don't want to waste my time. Is basically what you were saying.
Yeah, because we were encouraging them to change their diet and lifestyle, encouraging them to eat. For patients with severe cardiovascular disease, our protocol is having them eat dark green leafy vegetables 6 times a day. Right? Because it's a green leafy vegetable that contains most amount of nitrate that gets converted into the nitric oxide. And so we also tell them...
How does it get converted?
So when the nitrate actually gets initiated by the bacteria in the posterior third of your tongue, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, we strongly recommend people not using mouthwash, right? Antiseptic mouthwash, because not only kills bad bacteria, but also good bacteria. So the mouthwash is actually associated with the cardiovascular disease. So that's the first thing to eliminate.
What?
Yeah. And then also...
Dude, you're blowing my mind. You're like the smartest orthopedic surgeon I've ever met. Once again, we'll get back to it.
Yeah.
In medical school, our big joke was it's really hard to get into orthopedic surgery. You take the smartest person from med school, and by the time they become an orthopedic surgeon, they're the dumbest.
Yeah.
You have done the exact opposite, man.
Yeah, because you don't really have to think about it, right? And once when we were at the VA hospital during the residency, we had a patient, who had an MI, and we had got an EKG. We were getting a medicine consult, and then they said, "Oh, we're too busy with consults. You guys are, residents. You take care of it." And then we said, "Well, I think the patient have ST depression. Wait a minute. I think we got the EKG upside down. It's an elevation." And then the medicine resident said, "We'll be right there." So we try to forget about the medicine, but
so that is so I went deep into the whole nitric oxide thing because I like to work out. I did it strictly because I was like, I'd like to get some more, and I was freaked out that it starts out that the bacteria has to convert the nitrate.
Yeah, nitrate into nitrite.
Yeah,
and your saliva contains a significant amount of nitrate. And so, and then your bacteria on your tongue converts it into nitrite. And when it goes into your stomach has to be acidic enough in order to actually convert it into nitric oxide. So when patients are also on proton pump inhibitors, they said that's one of the most disservice that's done to the large population and people on Nexium, Prilosec, because it doesn't make your stomach acidic enough. But also the proton pump inhibitors actually stimulates the AMDA, which inhibits the nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme that actually produces the nitric oxide. So the proton pump inhibitor also has a strong correlation with the heart disease also.
Oh my God. So that's why there's the correlation.
Yes. It's because it inhibits production of nitric oxide. That's where the correlation comes from.
Dude, I'm on PPIs.
Yeah.
I've tried to come off. I'm like all my patients.
Yeah.
I end
was
up
on it
with
too.
horrible heartburn.
Yes.
Like I will sit there and just go, oh my gosh, screw this. I don't care if there's a slight risk of dementia, a slight risk of coronary artery disease. I'm in a lot of pain. Pain trumps everything.
Absolutely. I was actually, at one time, I thought I was having a heart attack in the middle of the surgery.
You had reflux?
Because I had such a bad reflux.
Wow.
And then, I would stop surgery. Anesthesiologists would have to give me antacids so I can get back into surgery.
No way.
But once I went whole food plant-based, within 3 weeks, I used to sleep with 3 pillows. Within 3 weeks, it was gone. My seasonal allergy was gone. I lost weight. And then my reflux was completely gone.
If I can figure out a way to get my patients and myself off of a PPI, it's funny. There's always going to be one trigger that'll get somebody to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And it's the thing closest to home.
Yeah.
I steal the samples that they give us, and I get terrified. The one thing I do whenever I travel, it's like, okay, I need to make sure that I have my contact case, my glasses, my PPI, and then everything else is kind of secondary. It's like, I'll buy underwear if I forget underwear. I'll do whatever. But I need those 3 things. I need to be able to see, and I do not want that heartburn to come back. Wow.
Yeah. So,
but nitric oxide.
Yeah. So the one of the patients, the group of people, we definitely recommend nitric oxide supplement. And the booster is people who are on PPI who can't seem to come off, but they really do need to make an effort to do whatever is necessary to come off of it.
That's interesting. So why can't I just go to Walmart and just buy NO Explode? What's unique about yours?
Yeah, so it's well balanced because there's 2 main pathways the nitric oxide gets produced. Number one is the endothelial pathway. And so you have to balance that along with the nitrate-nitrite pathway. Okay. So, for endothelial pathway, it may work well for if you're young and your endothelium is not damaged. So most of the products that you see in the market is really just geared towards endothelium. It's not balanced between the endothelium and nitrite pathway. And so we were able to come up with a formula that balances the two, and so that you can actually elevate the nitric oxide through the nitrite pathway, and then you can increase the endothelial progenitor cells. So by also eating like dark green leafy vegetables, use this as a supplement, and then nutritionally increasing the nitric oxide, that will help start to repair the endothelium. Once you do that, then the endothelium will function properly. And so it's balancing the two, and most of the products out in the market are really geared towards young gym goers, who wants to grow their muscle. And then a lot of times they don't even make nitric oxide.
Everything is either arginine or citrulline.
Yeah. So you have to be, and we now know that arginine really doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right?
I was listening to a podcast on that where I went, oh my God, I have spent so much money.
Yeah.
Because I have been taking, I want to call myself an idiot. I will research the heck out of something for my patients, but I will knee jerk if I'm like, oh, cool, I can work out harder. Yeah, I'll take that.
Well, that's
and
it.
And not do my homework on it.
Well, they said the doctors are the worst patients, right?
Yeah.
But we used to think arginine does get converted to citrulline and makes the nitric oxide, right? So in the beginning, most people thought, okay, if we give them arginine, it would work. However, in order to make enough nitric oxide, if you had intact endothelium, you have to each serving has to be about 10 grams.
Whoa.
If you have 10 grams of arginine, most likely you are having diarrhea. And so, you may boost the nitric oxide a little bit, but you're having diarrhea at the same time. I think that would be a pretty significant side effect.
It's going to affect the workout.
Yeah, it's going to definitely work out. Yeah,
you want to get that. Yeah. You want to get that PR on that deadlift or that squat. Yeah. Oh no, you don't want that.
Yeah, and so the better method would be boosting with the citrulline, that it goes to the urea cycle, and so you don't have to have a high dose, and then that actually gets converted into arginine, and then that would actually make the nitric oxide. But you also want to have the proper amount of cofactors. So cofactors such as methylfolate, so the methylized activated folate, ascorbic acid, and then we also put in the pine bark extract, which actually stimulates the.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, nitric oxide synthase, which is the enzyme that actually produces the nitric oxide. Also can pass through the blood-brain barrier, and so that it actually stimulates the nitric oxide synthase within your brain also, and so that it increases the blood circulation in the brain as well.
Huh. Yeah. I have never come across that. I try and read a lot on this stuff. So, all right, so that's interesting. You put a lot of thought into your nitric oxide booster. You don't use citrulline or arginine. What do you actually use?
No, we do have citrulline in there.
Okay.
Because we also want to stimulate the endothelium pathway as well. All along with the pine bark extract, and also we have the ingredients to stimulate the nitrate-nitrite pathway. along with the cofactors.
Awesome.
So we have all the ingredients, and then also antioxidants is important because the nitric oxide is a unstable a radical. And so then therefore you need antioxidant to allow it to stay in there longer. And then one of the cofactors is actually BH4, which actually gets stabilized by curcumin. The study have shown. So we actually have curcumin and turmeric in our Neonox product as well.
Oh, awesome. So we've got the nitric oxide, and what else? What else do you have?
So we also have a neo-antiox. As you mentioned, inflammation is the root cause of most of the disease. And so we want to help people keep the inflammation down, as well as you also mentioned oxidative stress, right? And so people need to consume more antioxidant. Most of the antioxidants are in plants. And that's why, plant-based polyphenols, right? And so what we have found was one of our main ingredients is amla, Indian gooseberry powder, which is the most powerful.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. Amla is Indian gooseberry?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I've always thought of them as different things.
Yeah.
I have read about gooseberry and its ORAC potential and amla because we use that. I put that in my subscription box because of the anti-diabetic insulin-resistant effect.
It's the same thing. So you mentioned ORAC score. So we all know that blueberries has a high antioxidant capacity, right? And so ORAC score-wise is about 4,500. And then the ginger, which we also know has high antioxidant capacity, as well as is anti-inflammatory, which is about 49,000. And turmeric, which we know it's like the king of superfood, right? But it has about 120,000 ORAC score. Indian gooseberry is about 265,000. So it is by far the most powerful antioxidant food on the planet. There's really nothing has more antioxidant capacity. And so we included the amla, which is an Indian gooseberry powder, along with turmeric, curcumin, which is the active ingredient. But turmeric has about 300 active ingredients, and curcumin is the most well-known and most studied. But the study have shown that you want to have not just curcumin, because that's a one active ingredient. You also want to have the turmeric powder as well.
I love you put some thought into this. As somebody in the supplement industry, you've put a ton of thought into it. That's exactly what we did when we researched every single ingredient for Atrantil. 3 ingredients. We source it. It's pure. I went to your website. I saw that you do all the things that we do also, which is GMP facilities, made in the USA. You know exactly where you source it.
Yeah, and these are all. And we also have a physician advisory board, and so this is produced with the thoughts and advices from all our advisors, and they all practice lifestyle medicine, anti-aging, longevity medicine. And they're all,
Doesn't seem like you need a whole lot more than you. You seem to have this stuff figured out.
Yeah, but definitely we wanted to do it as a team effort. So I definitely want to give them the credit that they deserve as well.
That is awesome. And then what else did you bring? Some Neo Greens? What are those?
Neo Greens. And one of the things that we recommend to everyone is at least eat 30 different kinds of plants every single week. So then you give diversity to your gut microbiome. And as you probably know so much more than I about the gut microbiomes and gut health, but one of the things that we recommend to people is eat 30 different kinds of plants every single week in order to maximize the diversity of gut microbiome. And I know it's difficult with busy schedule, and average Americans consume about 10 to 15 grams of fiber per day, right? We recommend eating 70 grams of fiber per day.
70?
70.
Because it's not just, you've got soluble and insoluble. Yes. So just saying fiber, a lot of times people will be like, I can't do that, I'll get so gassy. But you have to realize that there's 2 different kinds of fibers.
2 different kinds.
And the vegetables really offer the insoluble fiber, which does something different. Which
as
works
well as soluble.
As well as soluble.
Yeah.
And then they both do different things. They feed the bacteria. They help you go to the bathroom. They do different things, but they lower the cholesterol. They do all that stuff.
Yeah. And most people initially will feel bloated. That's already a sign that they have, in my mind, poor microbiome, right? Poor gut health. And they don't have the right type of diversity, right type of bacteria. That's why they're getting bloated. They have to get over that phase. So if they're bloated, we tell them, slow it down. Just go easy, right? Don't go from 10 grams to 70 grams overnight because you're not going to feel good. But also, one of the starter kit for plant-based is actually toilet paper. You will go to the bathroom quite often. and which is actually good for you, right?
I want you to listen to. So I mentioned a few of these people, but I've been on there. I've been on a lot of these podcasts, which is how I become develop relationships. Chris Kresser had a Mayo Clinic gastroenterologist on, and you have to understand that the whole concept of the microbiome and dysbiosis and leaky gut, it's the last people to show up are the academicians of my field. So he actually had a Mayo Clinic gastroenterologist on where he said, he's like, well, the whole concept of bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, may not be that it's as simplistic as bacteria growing where it shouldn't be. It's probably more relevant that we're not feeding them what they need so that they can diversify in the way that they want to be.
Yes.
We are limiting that. And when you look at the plasticizer that we were talking about, DEHP, they have linked that to a higher incidence of a Clostridium species, which produces a chemical or a protein called P-cresol, which has been linked to autism.
Wow.
So then we keep coming back to the same thing. It's if your microbiome doesn't do what it should, it can do bad things against you. If you feed it bad things, so if you give it the diversity. So this Mayo Clinic guy, he blew my mind because they're doing like MR, PCR analysis and all this other stuff. And he said, maybe we should be feeding the foods that people think are causing them the bloating, and maybe eventually the bloating will go away.
Yes.
That's exactly what you just said.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that is the main cause. So initial bloating doesn't mean you're allergic to the plant food or beans or whole grains. You just don't have the diversity of microbiome in your gut. But it can be changed. And so that's why we recommend people eating 30 different kinds of plants, and not everyone can do that consistently. And so that's why we developed Neo Greens, which has about 35 different ingredients. It also has a probiotics, it has a digestive enzyme, but most importantly, it has fermented organic fruits and vegetables so they can digest it easily. But again, I always stress that this is a supplement, but we want people to eat real food, right? Eat the real fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and nuts and seeds, right? And then they will begin to repopulate their gut. And so our gut microbiome looks completely different than what it is in the Indians in South America, and then also Africans, right? It's because those countries, they eat a lot more fiber and more, and they have a diversity of microbiomes. And that's why they don't have heart disease, diabetes, although things are changing now, especially like in Africa. And then the obesity is rising. Over 10 years ago, heart disease was not even a top 10 cause of death. Now it's number 4.
Wow.
And stroke is number 5 cause of death. And diabetes is rising, tripled over the past 10 years. And so that's why we're importing all these diseases to all these third world developing countries. But if people would go back and then stop eating processed food, if it comes in a box, has more than few ingredients, you should put it down, right? And then shop along the edges of the grocery store, right? And eat real food, right? And then and not too much, right? And so that's one of the best way to live long is decreasing the calorie intake each day, right?
Dude, I love everything that you're saying. So what's the name of your Netflix special so I can watch this?
well, this podcast.
No, in all seriousness, you're the name of your New York Times best-selling book that explains all this?
We'll be working on it real soon. Yes.
So how can anybody connect with you? Oh, and by the way, you're going to give us a code so anybody that's watching this can try some of your stuff?
Yes.
Put in code GCP, Gut Check Project, GCP?
GCP, and then everyone would get 15% off.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, how can anybody find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so our website is neogennutrition.com. So it's NEOGEN nutrition.com.
Awesome. All right, that was a chock full visit. Let's go ahead and close it down.